Cheers to adulting.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, I'm Ashley,
And I'm Abby.
and this is Cheers
To Adulting.
And today we are joined by a special guest, Casey Urban. Say hello, Casey.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on. So it's been a while since we've recorded an episode. I don't
A
remember.
minute or two.
Yeah, because we've had things going on in our lives. Abby started grad school. And I started creating a baby. So that kind of like threw me for a loop. So I kind of had to adjust to that. Also like the whole like basis, well, not the whole basis, but one of our shticks is cheers to adulting because we liked to drink and get a little turnt while we did the episode. And now I can't get turnt and it's fucking sucks.
I was wondering about that. I was like, I wonder what she's sipping on today. Probably like some seltzer.
Yeah, it's real riveting. So the next episode I'm gonna make Abby drink for the two of us.
Can
Yeah.
very much do.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I'm drinking a seltzer. We did have a non-alcoholic G&T before this.
Nice.
Ritual Proof makes like their own like different like non-alcoholic versions of certain alcohols. The gin's pretty good. It has like nice notes and flavors. My favorite so far has been their tequila, which I started trying all of these because I wanted like an alternative to like having like not drinking all the time, but I really do like cocktails. Like I like mixtures and flavors and stuff. It's not necessarily about like, you know, getting drunk or whatever.
Yeah.
I like flavor profiles. And so I was like, you know what? I should really mix in a healthy sort of alternative and got onto Ritual Proof and I like it. I did discover we're not paid. Also, as I've stated, I'm pregnant, so I'm off ADHD medication. So that's gonna make this real fun.
I'm taking ADHD meds for the both of us.
Yeah. So one more segue on non-alcohol alternatives is I discovered we're not sponsored. Surely they make non-alcoholic wines, but it's like alcohol removed wines, so they're really good. Me and Abby tried this sparkling white and I was shook. It was really good.
It was some good wine.
Yeah, it was like dry. It wasn't like too sweet because usually I'm like, I guess I'll have, you know, Martinelli's. I mean, I like a Martinelli sparkling cider, but sometimes you don't want something so saccharine sweet.
Totally.
Anyway,
back to the main attraction.
Yeah, let's talk about some adulting. Let's start with you. Adulting or non-adulting that you have done. Either you can praise yourself or you can be like, you know what? I'm a wife and a mom and working. So like these are things I haven't done and there's no shame in that.
Yeah. Well, I've been adulting a lot this week because my family has COVID and I came to Texas to visit my family and it's been kind of a bummer because, you know, we can't really do much, but thank God everyone is okay. My husband just got some meds today. My mom's feeling better today. My dad doesn't seem to have symptoms and I've been mostly asymptomatic. I had like a few symptoms in the beginning, but so yeah, luckily we all got it here in Texas where there's plenty of room for our toddler to run around at my parents' house, because if we were stuck in my 2-bedroom apartment outside of Manhattan, it would have been pretty brutal, especially in the cold winter months. So yeah, taking care of my fam while they're sick.
So
not having much time to myself, just having to like beg my dad to watch Sydney. So I'm like, can I just work out for like 30 minutes, please? So I don't go insane.
Oh my God, man. So how soon did you get COVID once you got there?
Pretty soon. We got in on Sunday. And then Kyle and I went to Wimberley, Texas. So if anyone's familiar with Texas, it's a really pretty part of Texas. We went to Wimberley for like a little getaway, but like the very first day he was just like totally out. And so we went to get tested and we found out We had it pretty early on, so
Oh no.
yeah, it was rough, but I'm happy that everyone's okay, and just living the simple life here in quarantine world.
So how long
you
will
know
y'all have to stay in quarantine?
10 days.
So what day is this for you?
6. No, 5
Oh,
man.
halfway through.
yeah, no, 6. It's 6. Yeah.
Little more than half.
Yeah. Yeah. But how about you? How are you feeling? I know you said the first trimester was pretty tough, right?
I wasn't too bad. I was just really tired.
Yeah.
And morning sickness wasn't fun, but I know people like get it a lot worse.
Yeah.
But that wasn't fun. But as far as like pregnancies go and first trimester, I guess it wasn't that terrible. Now I'm in like the sweet spot. Second trimester is supposed to be like nice and easy breezy until you hit the third trimester. So
Yeah.
nothing too bad. The biggest thing is like trying to switch to side sleeping. I started early because I'm a back sleeper and I fucking
Yeah.
hate it. It sucks.
Yeah, that's
Also really miss margaritas and tequila. People say like, oh, you'll forget about it and it'll, it's not that bad. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like I love drinking, like not getting drunk, but I love, casual drinks.
Right.
And like I like the
Right.
taste of like certain wines, and like I miss coconut tequila, which is so delicious, just sipped on ice.
Mm.
And
Wow, I've never had that.
it's really good, 1800 coconut tequila. And my thing on days that I would have off is when I wanted to be productive at home, is I'll be like, you know what, I'm gonna day drink, but I will just be like cleaning and organizing all day and be
Yeah.
day drinking. So it like feels like fun, like I'm having a party by myself at home, like drinking. Now it's like,
Totally.
now it feels like I'm actually adulting and it's boring, and there's no dopamine in that. So my brain's like, I don't want to do that.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess my adulting, I had an adulty day today. And I'm really tired. We had our 20-week sonogram today.
Yay.
And after that, I
Did
came
you
home.
find the sex?
We did. It's a secret.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
I wasn't originally going to find out. And then I changed my mind. I was like, I wanted it to feel more connected to the baby and like kind of make it more real. So I decided last minute that I wanted to join Michael and learning sex.
Yay.
That's a fun little secret I get to keep for the next, 4 months. And then I came home, walked the dog that I'm sitting for, and then I made myself breakfast because I barely had anything before I left the house, which is something I couldn't do. Anyway, I got my new winter tires that I got for Christmas from Michael for Christmas birthday. And I got my inspection sticker, and I did some grocery shopping, and I picked up some pet supplies, and I came home, and it was a pretty adulty day. I'd say
Nice.
so. I'm pretty fucking exhausted.
Totally. Especially winter tires for Christmas/birthday. Wow. That's like, that should have been the first thing you said.
I mean,
this is the definition of adulting.
Yeah. I mean, usually like Michael knows how much I hate, because my birthday is the day after Christmas. I hate getting combo presents. He was like, I know you hate it, but it was really expensive. So, and I was like, I get it now.
Well, happy belated birthday too.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And I'll jump in on my adulting. I've decided that the adulting that I'm going to celebrate is basically the things that I've been able to accomplish over the last like couple of weeks, because this month has fucking sucked. I'm not going to get too much into the details of why it sucked, but holy smokes. However, regardless of all that, I finished my first grad school semester. I got practically just that alone is awesome. And I only took one class, but that class I got a 99.62% out of the whole, like I missed half a point on a midterm paper, but whatevs. So I'm really, really proud of that. I recently hit 300,000 followers on the TikTokies, which I fully recognize. Talking about the number of followers you have on a social media app is kind of like, okay, that's a little cringe, but you know what? I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the platform that I've been able to grow. I've also been writing a book on relationship anarchy, which is one of the things I talk about on TikTok. And I had just passed 50,000 words in my first draft endeavor, if you will. And my word count goal for the first draft is 75,000. So I am 2/3 of the way there. I'm feeling really good. Right? I don't start class up again until the 18th. And my goal is to get that first draft done before the 18th. And given how much I have been writing, I think that is a very feasible goal. So I'm feeling good. I'm gonna end this year on a high note, even if December tried its damnedest to kick my ass.
Suck my nuts, December.
All right. So today's topic is all about nutrition and healthy eating. And it is not just what people would think in like, oh, let me write down the right foods we're going to have, but eating or healthy eating is also a healthy mindset.
And it's like, so granted, a few episodes ago, we already did talk about like diet and weight loss and just like being healthy and like the healthy ways to approach it. So that's like a refresher, but we really want to focus on having a healthy relationship with food, body positivity, and saying fuck you to diet culture, which is where you come in.
Yes.
To really just hit home, because you're a healthy individual. You now have a very healthy relationship with food. And I know it's been a struggle, and I think it would be great to like hear your struggle. And you work with clients having to do that, so it'll be really great to get your insight on that.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to talk a little bit about it. I was bulimic on and off for about 15 years and anorexic on and off. And I went to a treatment center when I was 23, and then I relapsed on and off until I was like about 27, I believe, is when I finally found true recovery from my bulimia. And after healing or I guess I was probably had a couple of years of recovery under my belt when I decided that I wanted to become a certified eating disorder coach. And I help people with body image as well. And one of the things I love about coaching is I work directly with eating disorder professionals, doctors, therapists, dietitians, and I only take on clients that are at a certain level of stability where they're ready to heal their relationship with food and body image, and they are stable, and usually I work in conjunction with a therapist or a doctor, that type of thing. So yeah, that's what I do now. I'm also a flight attendant and a mom and a pole instructor and a yoga instructor and a singer. So I have like lots of other crap going on. So I have limited myself. Speaking of adulting, I've limited myself to 1 to 2 clients at a time, because I know now what I can and cannot take on. And coaching is very intense. You are speaking with your coach daily through messaging. I offer 24/7 Voxer messaging, and then I usually typically respond 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. And we meet once a week. We have a video call, and then with some clients I do yoga. So it's a pretty intensive 3-month program, minimum of 3 months. So I like to make sure I limit my clientele to 1 to 2 at a time.
Well, I think that's great, because it really makes sure that you're giving them the attention that they need. And
right.
I love that. Like, I immediately thought about how Abby, she teaches yoga at a place with
and at an eating disorder clinic. And actually I wanted to pick your brain about that.
Yeah, for sure.
I am somebody who I run trauma informed mind body, what they call mind body skills group. It's shorthand for yoga, or the shorthand would be yoga, at an eating disorder clinic, an inpatient center. And I would love to hear about how you form your classes for your clients, because I definitely learned for myself that it can be very trial by fire, taking something that's very, very body based and very focusing on the body, and then trying to work with people who don't want to focus on their body, telling them to think about their hips. They don't want to think about their hips. They hate their hips.
Right.
And I would love to hear just how you go about your classes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Well, first of all, I have a mentor. Her name is Jennifer Kriat Solis. She is Yoga for Eating Disorders on Instagram. And the website, I think, is yoga and then just the number 4 and then eating disorders. Highly recommend you check her out.
Ooh.
She also does mentor like workshop things where we'll meet like once a month on Zoom or once a week on Zoom for a couple months. I think she has one coming up in January. If you're interested, I'll put you in contact with her. But so I've done a lot of training with her, and I did a lot of training with other eating disorder professionals who are in the yoga world. That the little cohort thing that I was talking about, I did that last year. And it was really wonderful to be able to talk to different professionals and yoga teachers and just get different stories from going into treatment centers, because it is a different ballgame than your average class that you teach at a gym or a yoga studio, obviously. And you have to be very mindful. I personally try to stay away as much as possible for quote unquote from triggering body parts. A lot of times folks are feeling uncomfortable about their stomachs, for example, that type of thing. So really letting the practice be more heart-centered rather than body-centered, which is hard, obviously, when you're instructing people's bodies, right? But little by little, you start to build the rapport with the classes too. That was something I wanted to ask you, actually, is is it the same group every week, or do you have new people? Are you able to build a relationship with folks, or how does it work?
It is unfortunately kind of a rolling basis, and sometimes people
Mm-hmm.
can be there for as little as 1 to 2 weeks. I feel one of the longer clients has been there maybe 1 to 2 months, but it is always rolling. Every time I go into the room, there's at least 1 or 2 new students, which also means that I'm giving them the preamble every week. And I try to joke about, like, I know some of you guys have heard this a million times over, but always trying to give them that chance to kind of set the stage. And that can be very challenging, because I've definitely have seen wonderful times where, my classes, I keep very low key, nothing's mandatory. And sometimes you'd have a girl who sits on her yoga mat and like starts doing her makeup. And I'll think, what, that's a mindful activity. I'm not going to tell her not to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally. I give you props for that. Yeah, because and that environment, those poor folks are just so triggered, and I mean, not always, but often kind of on edge from being confronted about their eating disorders. And a lot of times they don't even want to be there. It was more of like their families kind of forcing them to be there. So kudos to you for doing that, because that is not an easy job at all.
It is definitely
but
not.
if you ever want to like have a phone call about that separately, like I'd love to talk to you about it more.
Oh, that would absolutely be wonderful, because I love that job because it keeps me on my toes. Every other job, it's so easy to fall into a rhythm, even because I also teach at like a behavioral health unit, partial hospitalization.
Nice.
It's very like those ones are a lot easier. Like sometimes you get people who don't want to be engaged, but that's okay. I have found the eating disorder one is one that will always keep me on my toes. And I did want to mention that there was a part 2 to the makeup one, where these are the moments where it makes me like, oh, I really wish I had these girls for longer. And she was one of the ones that I had maybe about 4 or 5 weeks. And the very last week she was there, she, instead of doing her makeup, she did the entire class, every single pose. She was sitting, breathing, laying down, like eyes closed. When it was time for Shavasana, I was like, this, I'm going to remember this one for a bit. And that was just, one of those like wonderful moments. But yes, that would be absolutely wonderful. Which for those who are listening, things like a mind-body practice can help us with our relationship with food, as again, especially if we're in a place where we need kind of that mental health professional help. Definitely making sure we're doing that, making sure the classes that we're taking are trauma informed, because a lot of yoga classes unfortunately go in that opposite direction, where it's very image focused. You know, you have the teachers who are also setting really rough examples just in terms of aesthetic, but that ability to kind of find that mind body connection is actually a wonderful piece in repairing one's relationship with food, or at least helping their mindset change about what nutrition means. That it's not, oh, a fad diet because I got to get rid of my fat, and more, this is a way to nourish this amazing gift that I have been given.
So like for you, how do you approach, for example, like when, I don't know if you do, or how do you approach it? Like, say, for example, like someone wants to lose weight, which is like, you know, sometimes you need to lose weight, or you want to because it'll make you feel better, or more so like it's less about lose. So for example, at the end of last year in the fall, it finally dawned on me like that I had gained quite a lot of weight between medication and COVID. And I was like, I don't really feel comfortable in my body. Like, I know I look okay, I'm healthy, but I want to be healthier. So I always thought of you, and I was like, you know, I want to make sure I'm doing this in a positive way, because like I've never had, thankfully, an eating disorder, but I always had body image issues growing up because I was always, it sounds very first world problem. I was always extremely skinny, as you know, but people would always accuse me of being anorexic or bulimic. And so it always gave me such issues that I would try and like overeat. I would always try and gain weight because I always felt less than, and that my body looked gross. And, you know, people would always comment on it and that I needed to eat. And I'm like, I am eating. And so when I did gain weight, and then not at a different point in my life, I saw pictures of myself when I was younger, and I'm like, felt happier, and was like, I like having meat on my bones. So I knew that when I started my, you know, healthy journey last year, I was like, I want to make sure that I don't lose too much weight.
Yeah.
And because like getting my metabolism like kickstarted, and I like made sure to tell people to be like, please tell me if you think that I have lost too much weight, because I don't want to get there. So anyway, I digress. How do you approach like that sort of conversation, or what would you recommend to people that, you know, they want to feel like, I didn't want to have to buy more clothes, and I knew that, you know, I was going to feel, I like to feel stronger. And for me, it was like, I want to feel my fittest, and not necessarily like focus on what it says on the scale. Like, I want to feel my strongest. And if I happen to like lose weight and slim down at the same time, you know, great. But it was more about like feeling stronger and happier. So what do you tell people like approaching like food and exercise and quote unquote diet?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a big question. I generally don't promote any type of purposeful weight loss. I do believe, like you said, like sometimes somebody wants to lose weight because they just would like to feel better in their body. For example, Sarah Sapora, who is a huge plus size influencer and is all about body positivity and health at every size and all of that. And yet at the same time, she has said before, like, I know sometimes when my knees start hurting when I'm walking up the stairs, it's because I've been eating too much sugar and I need to work on that, you know? So I do believe that you need to, of course, listen to your body. And sometimes that means you might want to lose weight, but my approach is all about intuitive eating and health at every size. I don't know if y'all are familiar with Health at Every Size, but it was written by Lando Bacon, PhD, and it is an incredible alternative approach to mind, body, food, wellness, everything. It is all about the actual person instead of the weight, right? Like the
Yeah.
person, the whole, because, sometimes you walk into a doctor's office and the doctor just looks at your weight and they just say, hey, you need to lose weight. That person may have had an eating disorder for 30 years and this is their healthiest they have ever been,
Yeah.
Or they
so
also might be going
it's
off
more of
the
a
outdated
holistic
BMI.
approach. Right, exactly. So what I focus on is health at every size, intuitive eating, which can be really hard for folks. And I actually, at some point, maybe today, I could even just read like the 10 principles of intuitive eating. Actually, let me just go ahead and pull that up because I think it'll be a little bit easier for people to understand. And then I do focus on mindful movement. It is important, obviously, if somebody has struggled with an exercise addiction, that's something we want to hold off on until they feel better about it. But those are my three main principles: the health at every size, the intuitive eating,
And I think
mindful movement.
intuitive eating is probably something super important for people that are neurodivergent, such as like myself and Abby.
Same.
Yeah,
Totally.
because the thing is that it gives us a dopamine rush, and so we tend to eat the wrong foods because it tastes really good. It's like we need to eat, but it's like we need to eat food that are gonna benefit our body better and give us the nutrition and actually keep us full. And I found I've had a pretty, like, I know there in the past, I don't want to say binge, but would just like eat a lot of crap because it like tasted good and it gave me that dopamine rush. And now I have like this sense of control as opposed to Michael. He hates when I like bring like candy home because he's like, I won't stop eating. And me, I'm like, I like having it, but like not like going crazy, because then it's like keeping it as a treat and not limiting myself. So like I'll go through spurts of like, shit, I want to get some ice cream, even though I'm lactose intolerant, and I'll buy it and like I'll just have a little bit. And I was like, that's enough. That's all I needed. It was like perfect. And trying not to, limit myself. Otherwise, I'll go crazy to be like,
exactly. That's the main point that I struggle to really influence in my clients, is that yes, it is much better to allow yourself those treats, honestly, whenever you want them, because, and maybe at first you're gonna be like, oh my god, I've been on a diet my whole life, I get to eat ice cream every day, fuck yeah, I'm gonna eat all the ice cream. And maybe you do eat ice cream every day for 2 weeks, but then you feel sick and then you realize that that's not good for your body and you start to find some balance around it, so when I say food freedom in the beginning, I really do, always, I really do mean like 100% food freedom.
We had Taco
and
Bell
I
for my
realized that
birthday
for some
last
people,
night.
What's that?
I said we had Taco Bell for my birthday last night. I couldn't figure out, and I like had a craving. I was like, I want Taco Bell, and I don't have Taco Bell very often because I have to go out of my way. And like, it's not great food, and I love to cook, and I don't really do fast food. But being someone who's gluten intolerant, that's a pretty easy thing to do. It's just like, so I was like, fuck it, let's get some Taco Bell.
Right?
Yeah, I want some Taco Bell for my birthday.
Totally.
Right. I always
Hell
think
yeah.
about,
But yeah, so I want to read this. I want to read, if you don't mind, the just the 10 principles of intuitive eating quickly. So yes, honoring your cravings is a big part of that. So number 1, reject the diet mentality, which we've definitely been talking about. 2, honor your hunger. 3, make peace with food. 4, challenge the food police. So that's a big one. Changing your language around food. Not, try not to say sugar is quote unquote bad, salads are quote unquote good, because you're putting morality around food, and that is just going to add more stress to your life. 5 is discover the satisfaction factor. So really working with your body to discover when you are satiated. And we'll talk about that in a second. I use the hunger scale. 7 is feel your fullness. 6 is feel your fullness. 7 is cope with your emotions with kindness. 8 is respect your body. 9 is movement, feel the difference. And 10 is honor your health, gentle nutrition. So the ones that I wanted to talk about, one was to feel your fullness. So the hunger scale is huge. Half the time, it takes me 3 months even to just get to for someone to like really start feeling their hunger, because most of the time, no matter what issue you have with food, if you have an eating disorder or if you tend to overeat and binge, most of the time a big part of it is you don't have any idea how you're actually feeling in your body. So we work on the hunger scale, which is 1 to 10, 1 being like completely famished, you're going to pass out, 10 being like Thanksgiving dinner way too overly full, you feel like you're going to be sick. And I encourage my clients to always stay somewhere between 3 and 7, because anything below that, you're going to be so hungry you're going to binge because you're starving. Your body is programmed scientifically to do that for you. And then anything, 8 or more, you might start feeling like you need to purge, or it makes you feel uncomfortable. As y'all know, yoga is a wonderful way to get in touch with your body, but sometimes it's even just like sitting with your eyes closed, if that feels comfortable for you, and putting a hand on your heart, or imagining a hand on your heart, and just really like feeling like what's going on underneath my heart. What emotions am I feeling? Am I feeling anger? Am I feeling joy? That's a lot of the work that I do with my clients too, is like just feeling into their body, not just the physical sensations, but the emotions as well. Like, what is their body actually saying? And that can take months to even get down.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you had something you want to say. I mean, I feel like there was something that I was kind of bubbling in the back of my mind. And of course, once the beautiful thing about that ADHD mind is that it flies right through.
I had one too.
No
and I was
problem.
Like, no, wait for her to finish talking and then it's gone.
Right. Which in some ways shows that impulse. But a lot of the ways, we talked about the neurodivergence and how in a lot of ways we find ourselves on both ends of that spectrum, whether it is, because I know this is something that I would do as well, where I'm so focused on that dopamine hit that I'm already thinking about seconds before I have finished my firsts. And it is so hard to kind of bring it back. Like, you literally have a full plate in front of you. Don't think about your second helping, because you're out of the present moment, you're out of your body. It really is just that dopamine hit. But then we're on the other side where we can hyper focus so much on our tasks that we could drop to that 2 or 1, because I was so busy cleaning my closet that it's 5 o'clock and I haven't eaten all day. And I remember seeing a very similar scale, which I forget what the 2 sides were, but one of them they called hamster hungry, which is the idea like hamsters apparently, like, you have to be very careful about making sure they're well fed, especially after they've had babies, because they'll eat their own babies if they're hungry. Right. And so the idea is that you're so hungry that you're hamster hungry. You'd be willing to which is just, it's a funny way of thinking about it, but it was
use that.
Excellent.
Hamster hungry.
Very
I
much
get nauseated if I get too hungry.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, same. And now I remember exactly, there was the thing that was bubbling in the back of my head, and then it kind of slid away. One of my favorite personal trainers online, and I hate that I'm blanking on his name right now, but he had a video on nutrition, and all his stuff is usually more about functional body movements and all these things. And somebody asked, like, oh, well, what is your tips on nutrition and dieting? And he said, well, I eat what I want when I want to eat it. And that's it. Because if I start restricting myself, if I tell myself, no, you can't have that cookie, no, you can't have that pizza, that's all I'm going to think about.
Exactly.
And I remember hearing that, and I was like, oh, this is a breath of fresh air, because as somebody who has her toes in the fitness world, even with the pandemic, I see a lot of that really unhealthy. Let's talk about your macros. Let's talk about how many grams of this and that per day. And it is so refreshing to see someone go, no, eat what you want when you want to eat it. And yes, as we love our bodies, we'll want to nourish it in ways that will, feel good, but I'm not going to deny myself a slice of cake, because no, I can't have cake. Cake is bad.
Right.
I've had a cupcake for breakfast.
Hell yeah.
On more than one occasion. I'm like, whatever. It's got, nutrition in there and stuff. And
totally. And I'd love to go back to that point about having that struggle of like not even being finished with your plate and you're already thinking about your second plate, because so many people have that struggle. I myself have had that struggle. And even once I became free from my bulimia, I still struggled with binge eating for several years after. And I finally was able to quit like 4 years ago with binge eating. But one of the things that really helped me and also helps my clients is as you're finishing up with that last bite, is you actually start to say goodbye to your meal. And it sounds silly, but it is helpful if in your head, or out loud, if you feel comfortable with that, wherever you're at, like, all right, little food, thank you so much for feeding me today. Thank you. And then you say goodbye to it. And then that really helps. It kind of like finalizes it. And you also remind yourself that I can always have more the next meal. I can always have something delicious the next meal. And that's also helpful for that food dissatisfaction that we have sometimes. Like, y'all are obviously foodies, right? Like, y'all get it. I consider myself somewhat of a foodie as well. And sometimes you get a meal and you're just, ugh, this sucks. This is not what I was imagining. And for people who have eating disorders or any kind of food issues, it really sucks because you're just obsessive about it, right? And so if you really are struggling with those last bites and you're like, oh man, like this wasn't even what I really wanted, just remind yourself, say goodbye to those few bites and remind yourself that you always have the next meal to get that really dank sandwich or whatever you want, like you're always going to have the next meal. And so it's okay to have a little bit of dissatisfaction.
I've definitely had moments where, and I feel like recently it's been a weird relationship with food being pregnant. Anyway, I'll be eating a meal and like, it might be like, I could get more or something. And I might finish and be like, I think I'm like done eating this. I feel like I could eat more, but I'm like, maybe I'll wait. I was like, if I'm still hungry, I'm going to have some popcorn. And I love popcorn. And I have like a thing that you can like make your own popcorn. And I'm like, shit, I'll have popcorn. And I know I have more food and I can just eat more if I'm still hungry.
Totally.
It's been weird. So like recently, I know that I'm supposed to have like, my appetite obviously should be increasing. But I find now I feel like I'm eating less, maybe, or
yeah, I was gonna say it's not necessarily, not that I'm a pregnancy expert, but it's not necessarily going to increase.
yeah.
I know
So like,
some women, I've known women that actually lost weight in their pregnancy, and as long as your doctor is okay with it and you're stable, like it
yeah,
can be a natural response to hormones and stuff.
it's funny because it's like on one hand, it's like I know that it's like you're not eating for two. Your calorie, intake should be increased a little bit.
Right.
But it's like I tiptoe between like I get nervous if I'm like hungry and I'm like, how bad is this for the baby if I like wait too long to like eat food? Like this morning,
Right.
like I get really like I feel really guilty. Like before when I was not pregnant, I'm like, it's fine. Like I'll get to food. I try and like eat on the go. Just because like for me, it's like the longer I can stay asleep and like on my way to work, I'll be eating a yogurt and like have some other snacks. So like if I'm hungry, I will like have something to go to. Now I feel guilty if I stay hungry too long. And then at the other side of the spectrum is I'm always afraid, like, I don't want to eat too much because I'm afraid I'm like, oh, I also don't want to get gestational diabetes. So it's like been trying to find that happy medium. I'll find out if with my next appointment, whether I have to approach that, but
Yeah.
I like healthy food and cooking my own food. So I'm just trying to keep that happy medium of being like, but if I want to have a cupcake for breakfast, I'm going to have a cupcake for breakfast.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, unless you have the gestational diabetes in your family, you're probably okay. Again, not that I'm an expert, but I was pregnant once and I am an expert in eating disorders and eating. But I think that you're probably doing great. I would say just keep doing what you're doing. And I think this intuitive eating and food freedom approach should continue throughout your pregnancy. Because I also know, like you said, like you also love to cook, and I know you like nutritious foods too. I know you're not only eating cupcakes for breakfast.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry too much about it. But I know how it is. Like you start to get to this point in your pregnancy and you're like, oh my God, am I gonna have gestational diabetes? Like, did I ruin my baby? Did I eat too much ice cream?
And then I'm like, am I eating enough?
Right. Exactly.
Like trying to find that happy medium.
Yeah, totally.
It's more tangentially related than anything else, but it reminded me of, and this was along the lines of that mindful eating training and what have you, where if you are eating something but you're actually starting to crave something else, to not to just be like, okay, I will put this to this, like if you can, I'll put this to the side and I'll have this thing instead of going, all right, but let me get through this first. And then if I'm still hungry, I guess I can have it. Cause then
Right.
you're immediately treating it like, all right, I gotta blast through this baked potato. I gotta blast through the soup.
Oh, I really
Right.
want potato.
But giving ourselves, and I mean, a lot of, I think, especially how a lot of us were raised with that attitude of like, well, if we were kids and, oh, I'm actually craving a PB&J sandwich in the middle of a, pasta dinner, finish your pasta dinner. That's, and again, finish your plate on top of that.
Yeah.
And, it can really kind of ping at that guilt of like, well, no, I can't be doing that. I can't just abandon my pasta dinner to have a PB&J sandwich. But what's your alternative? You're going to force yourself to eat pasta that you're not even really all that interested in anymore. And, and then maybe even try to force a sandwich down, even though you're already full because, well, this was what I was craving. And I remember hearing that, and basically they're like, no, we are giving you full permission that if you need to switch gears in the middle of your meal, switch gears. Do not treat your meal like something you got to plow through in order to get what you actually want.
Yeah. It also, I mean, although it kind of is the opposite, it reminds me, just like our relationship with food, like as children, or for a lot of parents, not so much mine, but a lot of parents, and then how it continues into adulthood with unhealthy relationships with food is like, you have to finish your plate.
Mm-hmm.
So with the issue, like, for example, I'm a nanny and I'm mostly with a 3-year-old. And when I first started with her, the issue was trying to get her to eat enough food and snacking too much beforehand. And it's like the snacks are not going to give her enough nutrition. She needs to eat lunch.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like trying to like force her. And it's like, I also don't want her to have an unhealthy relationship with food. And when she says she's done, it's like, are you really done? Are you going to ask me for a snack like 5 minutes later? So one of the thing that I started doing is like, when she's like, can I be excused? And I'm like, you need to eat another bite of this. Or I'll say, are you full? She's like, well, I'm full of this. And I'm like, well, if you're full of that one food, you're not full. So you maybe eat the other things on your plate. Or if she's like, says, no, I'm full. If I offer you a cookie right now, would you eat it? Yeah, I would. Okay, you're not full. You want a cookie? That's what awesome. I say. I'm like, would you want a cookie? Yeah. Okay, well, honey, you're not full. Yeah. If you have enough hunger for a cookie, then you have enough hunger for this bell pepper.
Yeah. And I feel like toddlers are just like a whole different ballgame because they go through this weird phase and it's totally normal, but it's really weird that where they only eat bread and cheese.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
It's like, what? And you're like, oh my God, how are you alive right now? Like, how are you pooping? Like, what is going on? Like, and it's interesting. What I've noticed with my daughter is like, kids really do eat intuitively if you just let them. If you provide the food 3 times a day plus snacks or whatever, they really do eat intuitively, and it's really cool to watch. But sometimes it's scary because sometimes they'll hardly eat anything. And you're like, oh my God, are you okay? And then they'll be eating tons and tons, so it is pretty interesting just like sitting back and watching them. But I sometimes, yes, of course, they need a little bit of encouragement.
And my background, before I was a yoga teacher myself, I was actually a preschool teacher. And part of my, I briefly was back in school to get my degree in early childhood education. That degree never ended up happening. But one of the classes I had taken before I left the field entirely was on early childhood development and nutrition. And basically the biggest takeaway was they're going to be okay. If you are doing exactly that, like you are giving them all the options. It's not just, oh, we're giving you Mickey D's every night and you don't even get a chance to try an apple, but you're giving them a chance, like, here's everything that is presented, and doing your best to role model good eating habits yourself and getting them into that, like, oh yeah, no, this is healthy fuel. They're going to be fine. Like, and even if they go through a phase where, 2-3 years old, they're like, all I want is those potato chips with that block of cheese and that's all I'm going to eat. And that can be really, really scary because, you know, we're thinking, oh my God, they're going to be vitamin deficient. They're going to be, you know, 2'2" and their bones are going to break in half. But the reality is that they are going to be fine. And it really is focusing more on making sure that they have that healthy attitude about food, that food isn't the chore. Because I know for me, I was part of the clean plate club. With my family would actually sit me down at the table and I was not allowed to leave until the table it was cleared off. And it did not matter if I would tell my mom, let me serve myself so I can, you know, make my plate. No, just tell me how hungry you're. I'll feel. And it was always the same amount, no matter what. I could tell her, oh my God, I'm so full. Lunch was just really big. No, same amounts. But then you'd be penalized for it. And again, that throws off your attitude and that destroys that intuitive eating that we're all just desperate to get back. Like I want to be able to listen to my body now and not just all these external cues and societal pressures.
Michael's mother, she was like very intense about this clean plate club, and she would always give them way too much food. So he got really good at figuring out where to hide food. He hid it in the cushions of the dining room and he and it stayed in there. And he went back like years later and it just like dissolved. How it did not smell is insane.
Oh God.
My parents were never worried about me finishing food. Well, they were, but not about clean plate club. They just wanted me to be finished because I was a very, very slow eater. I like to take my time. And they're like, the nuclear holocaust is going to happen. You're still going to be at this table. And I'm like, meanwhile, my older brother would inhale his food. Like they would have to yell at him. They're like, you need to chew your food. And he's always had struggles with his weight and eating the right food and like not drinking a bunch of soda and eating a bunch of processed food and just having like eating way too much and not learning to his body about when to eat. And it wasn't until he ended up in the ICU from pneumonia and they said, wow, this wouldn't have been this way if it wasn't because of your weight. And so it like really like shook him and got him to be like, okay, maybe I need to have a different relationship with food. But he, you know, still like has little treats and he'll be like, I've been good and have a little treat here and there. And he's been like doing really, really good, having a healthier relationship with food. And I think it's nice. Like, I think maybe, I don't know if you agree, like, cause he also has ADHD and it's a dopamine thing. And I don't know if you relate your binge periods of being related to your ADHD and like getting that dopamine from it.
Yeah, that's actually, I just learned that science. It's interesting that you talked to me about this because I just learned that people with ADHD sometimes do try to get that dopamine rush from sugar or caffeine, which makes sense because my husband has ADHD and he's like always drinking coffee, like all day. And I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but I feel like I probably do have it. But that's a good question. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it in myself, but it's interesting you brought it up because we just learned, or Kyle was listening to some podcast that was talking about people with ADHD do look to get that dopamine rush from sugar or some certain kinds of food, sometimes like caffeine, that kind of thing.
The statistics are very high in that people with ADHD tend to struggle with eating disorders. It's very common for people with purging and binging and all of that is a common
that makes sense.
People, as well as, you know, other things that people with ADHD suffer from is, you know, addiction. Whether it's, for me, it's shopping, unfortunately, which I've gotten a much, you know, I've learned so much from TikTok about things that are attributed to my ADHD. And so it's been easier to check myself and to be like, do you need this? Are you looking for that dopamine rush? And so I'm fortunate that I also don't really have a very, well, I guess my addiction was shopping, but I haven't fallen into an addiction in other ways, like lots of alcoholics, like might be undiagnosed, untreated people with ADHD. And so they are self-medicating.
Right.
And because it gives them that dopamine, and they don't realize that they're just self-medicating in a very unhealthy way. So as I said, we had touched base on weight loss and healthy eating in a previous episode, and I did actually mention you in that episode. We're like, also the trigger warning, because we're talking about diet and stuff. There's certain things that like people really need to be aware of if they want to get into healthier eating and having a healthy relationship with food, is that like just avoid all fad diets.
Yes.
Like intermittent fasting, you're just starving yourself.
Yeah.
You're just
It's
starving
for the love of God. Yeah.
Right? And things like
For the
keto.
love of God, don't do intermittent fasting, please. If there's anything to take away from this podcast,
Please, for the love of God. And then similarly, unless your doctor recommends it for something like PCOS or metabolic syndrome, please stay away from keto. You don't do, you need those carbohydrates. Going into as somebody who was once a mid-distance runner, going into ketosis is miserable. You don't want to do that. And I looked up this stat. Only 5% of doctors would even recommend keto for just overall health. And I am going to believe that they're just recommending it for those who have a medical need for it. Because, stay away from it, guys. Please, for the love of God, eat your carbohydrates.
And also don't voluntarily go on a gluten-free diet if you aren't gluten intolerant or have celiac disease. I would love to put away a fucking baguette with, some olive oil and salt, like what I would give to have a baguette. But it's not going to be worth it. But however, I think it's a good thing, especially if people like find they're hitting hurdles and they're feeling bloated and stuff. Maybe you do have some allergies that you don't know about. Like I didn't start eating gluten-free until my 20s. And then I introduced it back into my diet. But then like at the end of last year, I was like, you know what? Maybe I should reevaluate again what I should and shouldn't be eating from a genetic standpoint. So I did a DNA test to see what are my predispositions, what is my body going to do better. And it said, you should probably avoid gluten because it looks like your genetics say that you probably don't digest it well. And I'm like, well, going back to being gluten-free. And funny enough, I knew it was probably from my mother because she was always allergic to whole wheat. And I'm like, maybe you're just allergic to gluten and wheat. And so she started losing weight and feeling healthier and better now that she's gluten-free. So it's like, you never know, maybe, issues of like feeling gross with certain foods is just an allergy thing or a sensitivity.
Totally. Yeah. And now there's all kinds of testing, like the food allergy thing can be tricky with people with eating disorders, obviously, because it is kind of like a fad thing to avoid gluten, dairy, all these things. But of course, sometimes people legitimately do feel better. So I think it's important if you have a history of an eating disorder to definitely make sure you get those allergies.
Yeah, like get a test
clinically
you
checked out.
Exactly.
And that I'd feel like a good kind of like round out is we are hitting the new year, and a lot of people will say that their New Year's resolution is to lose weight, or they'll go on a fad diet, keto, Whole30, and so on and so
vitamins
forth.
And drinks that all of them are just laxatives in disguise.
They will waste all of their money on the diet teas, which are exactly that. They're just you're gonna poop a lot, which is actually very, very nerve-wracking because addiction to laxatives is a type of eating disorder on top of that. So we have to be very, very careful. And I mean, we touched upon this with our last episode on nutrition, but when it comes to those New Year's resolutions, it is so tempting to want to be like, my New Year's resolution is to lose weight. If we can
to run more, even though you fucking hate it. Like,
I'm going to go to the
different
gym.
Exercise.
Exactly.
Right.
It is about my food is not a punishment. Moving my body is not a punishment. If I want to focus on something in the new year, I want to focus on learning to fall back in love with my body, fall back in love with what it can do. And if I'm going to do things like, and even if you are somebody who likes to lift weights, this is actually a script that I've been starting to write for a TikTok. I have no freaking clue what weights I bench press or squat. I have no freaking clue, because it's about, I want to just be strong.
Yeah.
I don't care
Right.
about that type of stuff. And having that mindset of if I'm even doing the standard issue running, gym, that kind of thing, it is because I'm so excited that my body can do these things. And this is a celebration of it. And just stepping away from, I'm, eating the avocado because I need to lose weight. It's no, I'm eating the avocado because it's
fucking
delicious.
good.
I love
Yeah.
it. Give me some guac,
Totally.
So
Give me that fat.
right. So if nothing else, if we can I'm not a fan of New Year's resolutions to begin with, but if we want to do one, if we can reframe it, step away from the, I'm going to go to the gym and diet and lose X amount of pounds. Let's step away from it and think, I'm going to go on a journey to fall in love with myself and my body again.
And I think it's super important because like when I knew that I wanted to get healthier at the end of last year, I was like, I'm going to do things that aren't going to make me miserable, because I think you've posted about it plenty of times about like,
Totally.
if it feels like a punishment, you shouldn't be doing it for exercise. I've taken plenty of those classes where you're just like, I just want to like die. And all I want is a burger after this. And that, I'll tell you, I did go get a burger after that. But it's like, it shouldn't be a reward. Like, oh, I
Right.
burned this amount of calories. It's just like, I just tortured myself and I shouldn't have.
Right.
So when I made sure to do things that didn't make me miserable. So I would do the elliptical and I'd do like 20 to 30 minutes. And I would watch, funny enough, I would watch the Great British Baking Show. As I did it, I was like, this is kind of, you would see as ironic, but I'm like, and I'm going to go cook that.
Hey.
And I also I had Abby join me a lot. I did a lot of Just Dance. I was like, dance is a great, and I didn't feel like I was punishing myself, and it just like felt great to move my body again. And I did force myself to do some quote unquote running, more like a jog, if it even that. It was just like slow enough. Also, I have big old titties, so it's like only want to just, I was like, I want to do enough that it's not gonna hurt myself. And I would like listen to stuff and it felt good. And I would just like kept it to like, nothing crazy. I did like 2 miles. So it was like nothing. And if I didn't do it, I didn't like kill myself. I'm like,
And so I've been able to help mentor fitness instructors who don't have a background in being trauma informed. And one of the biggest things I will tell them is that I know that the fitness world, even in the yoga world, there will be this attitude of like, you got to push yourself, get yourself to that limit, go further, go hard, one more rep. Any exercise that is going to push you that hard that you basically have to dissociate in order to finish is doing more harm than good. It is wonderful to get to challenge yourself. And one of the beautiful things about having that kind of mind body with anything, not even necessarily yoga, is if we can learn to be present with a challenge and breathe with it, that's amazing toolkit we can take with us away from the exercise. But if it is past that, if we're past that threshold of constructive challenge and they have to basically leave their body in order to get that one more rep in or do one more set at the bar, or BARRE, BARRD, there we go, but not like bartending, then it's not worth it. And if we can get away from that attitude, it's going to be so worth it.
And the only time really, if you're going to push yourself in some form of exercise, is if it gives you that dopamine in a healthy way. Just like I know I would push myself really hard to challenge myself for rock climbing.
Yeah.
And, once my fingers are done and my forearms are pumped, I'm like, you're useless then. And it's like, cool.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing about rock climbing, is it tells you when you're done, because you literally can't. It's like, I can't hold on to anything. My forearms are pumped. I'm done.
Exactly.
Cool. So let's go out drinking now.
Similarly with aerial, I always say that aerial silks, one of the reasons I love it is that you are done because you will try to do a cool trick with your aerial silk and your muscles will go, no,
we're
tired.
done.
We're done. It's not even, oh, I'm sore. It's like, no. And it's like, all right. And again, it is, things like rock climbing and aerial, these are also expressions, are very expressive.
Or pole dancing like you do, Casey.
Exactly. I joke about the free exercise, but honestly, if we are doing something that feels like exercise, then we need to reevaluate. If you are pumping that iron because, oh, no, I got to look swole, I got to, instead of, this is kind of fun to challenge myself. I like that feeling. Like,
I mean, I want to look swole.
I mean, looking swole is nice. I'm not going to lie, but
I want to be a swole pregnant lady. I mean, I'm still a little swole from my rock climbing, and I've always been stronger, pretty strong for, myself, but I want to get swole.
It's funny talking about getting swole, because I will say this is kind of random, but like I, from pole, my arms have just been much more muscular, and to the point where some friends who haven't seen me in years, they'll look at me, they're like, holy fucking shit, like you're ripped. I'm like, thanks, I guess.
Like your arms are jacked.
Weird, it's this weird thing, because I am so body positive and I am so body accepted since acceptance focused. It's been like this weird, like interesting thing in my own like self-discovery. I'm like, okay, am I okay with this? And like I am, like I'm coming to be okay with it. But like, for example, like I put on shirts from like or like sweaters from like a couple years prior, and like they don't fit my forearms anymore because my arms are so full. So it is like this, it's this interesting thing, because women are quote unquote supposed to be like, ladylike and dainty and right. And so now that I'm a little bit stronger, I'm like, this is like, I like it, it's cool, but it's also kind of like taking me aback, like, whoa, my forearms are huge, like this is weird. but I love it, like, because it makes me strong, it makes me feel good.
I had to go through that phase of when I got into rock climbing and I was like really deep into it, was not fitting into my shirts anymore because my biceps were, huge. And then I had to make the decision or realize that it's like, there's no point in keeping these. I won't fit into them anymore. And do I want to fit into them anymore? Like, I like having like jacked arms, and I think it's just, I've always felt competitive, like growing up with two older brothers, like I always wanted to be strong. I don't need no man to like open things for me. I've always, like, in an office space, for changing that big old Poland Springs water cooler thing, it's like, I can do it. And I always would get so aggressively angry anytime someone said, oh, one of the guys could have done it. It's like, bitch, I can do it better than them and not have to huff and puff, and I can do it in like one full swing. But unfortunately now I'm not supposed to do those things because I have to limit my lifting because pregnancy. So
it's a different celebration of body now. Yeah. It is body creating more bodies.
Exactly. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Truly.
Such a joy. Very informative. Wonderful.
Y'all are great.
Anything else you want to say?
I think you summed it up well. Again, thank you so much for your expertise. It is, this has been an absolutely wonderful podcast.
Yeah. And you, all of our listeners, you can find Casey on Instagram. What's your...
Yeah, it's at Casey Urban. So CASEY URB as in boy AN.
And Patrick is very great. He'll put a little image,
and it will be wonderful because he is editor extraordinaire.
Yeah. And then of course you can find our podcast. You can find it on Instagram. Cheers to Adulting Podcast. You can email us any ideas or, thoughts, etc., stories. Cheers to adulting@gmail.com. We never use our Twitter, but if you want to pop in there, it's cheers #2 adulting. Any other?
I think that is
we're on
it
Facebook if you want to do that on Facebook. And of course you can watch us in all of our beautiful glory on YouTube. Oh, and a baby. Hi.
Can you say hi?
Hi. Hi,
She waved.
Moon.
Oh.
Yeah, it was perfect timing because as y'all were wrapping up, she was like, "Mommy!" and like pounding on the door. I was like, "All right, I'm gonna put myself on mute." Thanks
Well,
y'all so much.
My
Have a
drink's
great
empty,
evening.
but cheers to
Cheers.
adulting.
Cheers to adulting.